Hello everyone, it's FarsTrapa and I'm happy to see you again for the last video of this Canadian election 2025 series. So today I will present you at last the Conservatives program. Like always, I think you are already used to it, but I will present the leader first and then 10 of the most important proposals this party has to offer if ever they get elected. So as always, if you didn't see it already, I invite you to see this video I made before, which is a general presentation of all these concepts I did this month on my YouTube channels. I say a couple of important disclaimers, but if you don't want to watch it, it's fine. We can also just continue on this current video. Like you have guessed it, I made that format for every other major parties in Canada. So for the Greens, for the NDP, for the Liberals, there's already a video there for you if you want. And now let's start with the presentation of the leader. So Pierre Poilievre was born on June 3rd, 1979 in Calgary, Alberta. A graduate of the University of Calgary, he first worked as a communications consultant. Elected as a member of parliament in 2004 with the Conservatives, he held various positions, including Minister of State for Democratic Reform under the Harper government. In September 2022, he became the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada and the leader of the official opposition. Now, let's get into the thick of it. So first, here is the Conservative plan for the drugs. So they want to prevent the installation of new supervised injection sites near schools, daycares, playgrounds, and parks, as well as replacing drug consumption centers with rehabilitation centers, fund the stay of 50,000 Canadians in drug treatment and recovery facilities, and finally allow judges to sentence offenders to mandatory treatment for their addiction. Next, here are CPC's promises for energy. So they want to build a national energy corridor combining several infrastructures, including a pipeline. They also promised to abolish Bill 69, which required environmental, social, and economic assessments before building a larger-scale energy project. And so they also want to set a 6-month deadline for any mining project to be approved. The CPC also promises to eliminate energy emission caps as well as authorize mining in Ontario's Ring of Fire, which contains chromite, cobalt, nickel, etc. To do that, they also promised $1 billion over 3 years to link First Nations and Ring of Fire mine sites to the rest of Ontario's road network. And finally, they promised to quickly approve 10 new energy projects that I don't have the time to list them all, but if you want, I will put the link in the description. And notably, there's a uranium mine in Saskatchewan, as well as a Crawford nickel mine in Ontario, but there's many more. Third, here is the Conservative Party of Canada proposition for taxes. So they want to lower the income tax first bracket from 15% to 12.75%, which would, according to them, make regular Canadians gain up to $900 a year. They promise to increase the TFSA annual contribution limit by $5,000, but only if you invest in Canadian companies. They want to temporarily reduce taxes on capital gains reinvested on Canadian products. And finally, take the basic personal amount, so the amount of money you can gain before being taxed, to $34,000 for seniors, so for those over 65 who continue to work. Fourth, here is the Conservatives' plan for defense and military. So they promise to give veterans control over their medical files. They want disability benefits to be automatically approved after 16 weeks. They want to give priority to veterans for public service jobs, build a new permanent military base in Iqaluit, recruit 2,000 new Canadian Rangers, purchase 2 new polar icebreakers by 2029, and finally cut off some foreign aid and redirect the money to defending Canada's Arctic, but not Ukraine, so the aid to Ukraine would still continue. 5 here is Poilievre propositions for the workers. So first, he wants to upper the registered retirement savings plan to age 73. Currently, it's 71. He wants to fund the training centers that will develop 350,000 workers over 5 years with a union training and innovation program. He promises apprenticeship subsidies of up to $4,000, and he promises to create a special employment insurance category for skilled workers leaving training centers. 6. Here is how Pierre Poilievre will quote-unquote put Canada first. So he promises bonus for provinces that conclude an agreement eliminating interprovincial barriers. He wants to establish a Blue Seal professional licensing standard so doctors, nurses, and engineers can work in all provinces. He wants to temporarily eliminate GST on cars made in Canada, and finally install a Keep Canadians Working Fund, which will give up to $3 billion in short-term credit and low-interest loans to support businesses affected by the commercial war crisis. 7. Here is Mr. Poilievre's proposition for housing. So he wants first to eliminate GST on purchase of new housing up to $1.3 million, which would, according to him, make more than 36,000 units more a year. He also wants to eliminate the GST on the construction of new rental housing. He promises bonuses for cities that increase the number of homes built by 15% or more, but give penalties for the cities below the target. He promises to sell 6,000 federal buildings and land to build housing. He also wants to simplify the National Model Building Code and cut red tape for builders. And finally, encourage municipalities to reduce taxes on new housing with the promise of federal reimbursement of 50% of the cost. 8 here's PP's measures for justice. First, he wants to use the notwithstanding clause, which is a clause in the Constitution that allows Parliament to pass legislation overriding certain sections of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedom, and that to allow judges to sentence murderers to consecutive sentences. He also wants to prevent criminals convicted of 3 serious offenses from being released on bail, and he will sentence them to a minimum of 10 years imprisonment. He promises life imprisonment for those convicted of producing or trafficking more than 40 milligrams of fentanyl. Life imprisonment also for importing or exporting 10 or more illegal firearms, and life imprisonment for those convicted of 5 or more counts of human trafficking. He also wants to create a new offense of assaulting an intimate partner with tougher sentences, and at least 1 year in prison for telephone fraudsters. 9. Pierre wants to change a couple things about taxation and administration. I know I already talked about taxes some minutes ago, but this section will be a different one. So first, he wants to increase the number of auditors for tax havens and reduce those for small businesses and NPO. So basically, change a little bit the role of the Canada Revenue Agency. He also promises to abolish the industrial carbon tax, so no more carbon tax for anyone. He also wants to eliminate the automatic annual increase in alcohol tax and return to 2017 levels. Also reduce federal government administrative regulations by 25% in 2 years, and to do that, implement a 2-for-1 law, which would requires the government to repeal 2 regulations for every new regulation implemented. 10. Here are the propositions about media and society by the leader of the official opposition. So first, he wants to withdraw public funding from CBC, but in the same time preserve Radio-Canada. He wants to give right-wing alternative media access to parliamentary press gallery and subsidies, as well as repeal Bill C-11, which was about continuous online broadcasting and wanted to highlight Canadian culture. And lastly, he promises to return John A. Macdonald statues and make criminal code penalties for those who deface or destroy statues. Now, to end, here are the flash proposals which didn't make the list of the 10 most important, but I think are still relevant to mention. So first, the Conservative Party wants to deploy Canadian Armed Forces troops and military helicopters to the US border. They promise to hire 2,000 new border agents, as well as putting drones, surveillance towers and scanners for patrols at the border. The Conservatives want to allow pre-permits for large-scale projects in certain build-ready areas of Canada, allowing companies to buy land in advance. They also want to require party leaders to disclose their assets 30 days after nomination and prime ministers to divest their assets 30 days after taking office. PP wants to increase tax credits for companies that reduce greenhouse gases emission, as well as reinstating seal hunt and reintroducing plastic straws, grocery bags, food containers, etc. Poilievre wants to fight international student fraud by requiring proof of income, housing, and a letter of admission to a recognized institution. And lastly, the Conservatives want to allow police to dismantle illegal encampments. So here it is the end of the video and of the whole series. So thanks for following me along with this month. Again, if you haven't seen those, the videos on the Liberals, the NDP and the Greens are already out, so check them out if that interests you. And yeah, the election is on Monday. I hope I really helped you with all those videos, and I hope you have now a clearer idea of what each party concretely proposes. So yeah, thank you for following during all this month, and I say see you again sometime in the future. I don't know when, but sometime. And thanks. Ciao everyone.